Hello, this is Abu Mesarsh, and this series takes a look at Barcelona's problems out of possession in 2025-2026. Let's start out by assessing the issues. What's wrong with Barca's out of possession? What are the numbers saying? And where might they be lying? And how serious is the problem? Secondly, are teams figuring out Barcelona's out of possession based on last season? What were the solutions they were using last season? What are the areas that they're targeting this season? Have they fundamentally changed their approach against Flick's team? Is the ultra high line that Flick's team is notorious for now becoming a more problematic area? Is it what some would say a suicidal tactic? And then who's responsible? Is it the players or is it the system? Is there a fundamental problem with this high press? Or is it just less effective due to injuries, absences, number of games? But then why is history on Flick's side? So we're gonna take a look at all of those in this video series. But first, let's look at how we got here, right? The change from Xavi Hernandez to Hansi Flick was notable in a way that Barcelona operates with shorter distances and a more organized in possession with a better rest defense in a way to reduce possessional losses, to reduce the number of turnovers, and to decrease some of the frequency with which opponents get to Barcelona's side. And then obviously he's been able to convince Yamal, Rafinha, and all of the stars to do all of the work out of possession so that they can score all of those 102 goals that they scored in La Liga and win the 4 Clásicos and whatnot. So he fine-tunes Barcelona's pressing and then stabilizes defense with more intense training and better organization. And the numbers more or less back that up, right, as you can see. So this is their basic out of possession setup, which starts from a zonal structure and then in a diamond, and then has this sort of pendulating shift from the fullbacks with the sixes filling in the back line, and you'll often see center backs ending up wide, and a very narrow structure where the winger often presses from out to inwards, and they try to really constrict and win the ball in those middle spaces so that they can quickly attack, right? And then later on, we'll see that this is predicated by not losing the ball too often, and then when they lose it, they are organized in rest defense, and we see some good examples for that. But in terms of when they are out of possession and when they sometimes can't win the ball right away, they have this high line which seeks to offside trap opponents. And as you saw last season in the first Clásico, that was a tactic that absolutely befuddled Kylian Mbappe. But then we've also seen examples, and this is what makes Barcelona game so fascinating, that it just takes a little bit of disorganization or lack of intensity, and opponents are able to exploit that, as Bayern did in this case. And we will see examples from Rayo Vallecano or Celta Vigo or Inter and Atletico Madrid last season, and more from this season. But if you see the changes from 2024-25 to this season, we'll see that the biggest takeaway is that a lot of things are actually quite the same, if not better. So you'll see Barcelona with improvements in shots, counter shots, clear shots conceded, and opponents' pass completion percentage allowed. The one concern is the highest chance quality, higher than Manchester United, which was already a huge concern last season. But as you'll see, opponents are just taking less than 7 shots per game, and this is already an improvement, actually a significant improvement over a defense that was stifling shots at an unprecedented rate last season as well. And you can see that they are actually giving up fewer clear shots and fewer counter-attacking shots this season under Hansi Flick, despite that there is some evidence mounting to build that the defensive distance and the PPDA is a little bit worse in terms of performances than last season. So, on the whole, Barcelona are still quite brilliant at keeping opponents from getting to their box and getting to those chances where they can have a high XG. But there's a strong sense that maybe the intensity is lower and maybe opponents are doing something different. So they are conceding fewer through balls. Opponents are not really able to create a lot of live shots, and they're not dribbling, as you can see, and they're not really carrying the ball. And Barcelona are able to control so many of the matches in possession, as you can see, actually even more dominant from last season to this season, if you see the purple mounting up here. But does that really matter in the end? Is that really the goal for Hansi Flick's side, right? So if I look at the data in 12, we can already see a little bit of this defensive intensity dropping and the defensive height dropping, and another additional information is the duels won percentage, which 64% last season was very, very strong, and ranked second in the league. And now this season they're at 61%, which doesn't seem like a huge loss, but that ranked them 15th. So they went from one of the best in the league to one of the worst. And that's got me thinking, is the league changing, or are opponents playing a little more directly? And spoiler alert, I found that they are. And I'm going to tell you more about that in the next parts of the video. And we can see some of the further questions that we are going to explore. Is the pressing not as effective? We're going to look at some more data specifically about pressing, and then a lot of video where you can see some examples of the pressing being bypassed. And we are going to take a look at how opponents were doing that last season and what were some of the successful examples and what areas they were targeting and who were they targeting. And then there's also a few new wrinkles that some teams like Rayo Vallecano are doing, or even PSG. But then, last but not least, we're going to take a look at the history for Hansi Flick, because you remember just from last season there was a November swoon, and if you go back, you remember the Bayern times, there was also that.